Live, local. This is Good Day Oregon Plus.
Hello, everyone. This is Good Day Oregon Plus. The voice you're hearing right now is myself, Greg Nibbler, here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We wanted to take you straight to this at the state capitol, where Democrats are set to unveil their legislative agenda for the upcoming session. And this is happening live, and they're going to begin speaking here any moment. So we will stay on this and follow along with what they're saying.
You all don't have to be silent yet. You don't have to. Just clarify that. We're waiting on 2 more speakers, and then we'll get started. Thank you for everybody standing up here to get your lovely photo. But give us just a moment. We have somebody who is just leaving committee right now, so you can talk amongst yourselves. They're running. Not yet. Not until you hear their name and idea.
No, it wasn't December.
All right, I believe we have everybody now.
Yeah, it feels like, yeah. That's what I got. That's what I got points.
Yeah. Just if you Okay, everyone. Thank you for your patience. If the last person in or out of that door can shut it, just so we're not getting any hallway noise for our folks in the back. Thank you, Dan. Great. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Rep. Choatson to kick us off.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Willie Choatson, and I'm proud to represent Southeast Portland. We are here today because Oregon families and Oregon values are under attack. The federal administration is threatening our health care, our economy, and our safety. They are disappearing our immigrant neighbors, targeting our trans community, and attacking our right to speak out. Oregon deserves better. We value the freedom to live without fear, and we believe diversity is a strength, not a threat. We will not tolerate unconstitutional attacks on our neighbors or allow hate to take root in our state. That is why we are fighting back. Today you will hear from legislators and advocates advancing urgent legislation to protect Oregonians. These bills are the result of months of collaboration and coordination between lawmakers and community advocates, partnering with legal experts and leaders from across the country. In the upcoming session, I will introduce a bill allowing Oregon to withhold payments to the federal government if the federal government unlawfully withholds funds from our state, and a bill to strengthen Oregon's anti-discrimination protections for immigrants. My colleagues will share their bills to protect our students, our public lands, and our civil rights. Oregon will not be bullied. We are prepared to lead with courage and compassion, and we will fight for justice and for safety for everyone who calls Oregon home. And Rep. Munoz will come up next.
Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Leslie Muñoz y soy la representante para el Distrito 22. Estamos reunidos hoy para dar aviso a los oregonianos que hemos formado un grupo dedicado a extender las protecciones para los miembros de nuestras comunidades. Esta conferencia de prensa es para informarles sobre el paquete de protecciones para nuestra comunidad de migrantes, nuestras protecciones de salud, recursos y de nuestros derechos civiles. La medida que voy a introducir le dará el derecho a las personas de demandar a los agentes federales cuando violen sus derechos constitucionales. Hemos visto agentes romper vidrios, destruir propiedad y lastimar a miembros de nuestra comunidad. Es una injusticia que causen daños y sigan su camino. A través de esta medida, los oregonianos tendrán el derecho de demandar legalmente a estos agentes federales. La medida también requiere que los agentes federales le den aviso a las autoridades locales cuando tienen operaciones legítimas en nuestras comunidades. Para más informes, por favor, comuníquese con mi oficina, la oficina de la representante Leslie Muñoz. Gracias.
Good morning. My name is Ira Coya Martinez. I am the son of immigrants, and I'm here on behalf of PECUN, Oregon's Farm Worker Union, and the Oregon Worker Relief Coalition. Our communities are under attack. The federal administration has created a climate of fear that reaches into homes, workplaces, and classrooms across the state. People are being taken off the streets, rights are being violated, families are being torn apart, loved ones disappear, and communities are left with questions and silence. Enough is enough. Oregon has a responsibility to stand up and take action. When the federal government targets our communities, or our state must be aligned in defense. And this package that we're sharing today, and the leadership of our state legislator is meeting this moment. That means supporting children and families whose loved ones have been detained. It means investing into universal representation so no one faces the legal system alone. It means protecting civil rights, data privacy, and refusing to allow federal agents to operate without accountability in our state. We must meet this moment with leadership. Silence is a choice. Action is a choice. Oregon must choose to protect its people, and is doing so with this package. Chinga la migra y si se puede.
Good morning. My name is Senator Casey Chama. I represent the East Portland, North Clackamas County, as well as the Damascus, Oregon. My bill helps make state agencies safer for all people targeted by ICE. It lets the key state office start making rules for what the state workers should do if ICE demands data or shows up at the door of the state agency. We have good protection in Oregon state law that stop state and local governments from working with ICE, but our agencies don't have the guidelines for when ICE demands data comes to their office. My bill will helps government workers plan for what to do when federal government tries to overstep. The reckless and lawlessness action of Trump administration show this kind of planning is a crucial step that we need to take in Oregon. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mercedes Elizalde, and I work for the Latino Network. Our organization provides services on school campuses in nearly 50 schools across 7 school districts. We're here today to speak for the students and the teachers and the community-based providers who are working there. In 2025, the federal government rescinded its guidance around sensitive locations that included schools. That means that enforcement activities have increased around schools, and this is not an if, this is happening. Schools have been forced to go on lockdowns over the past several months, sometimes several schools in a single day. Kids are going home saying after-school program was canceled, recess was canceled. Sometimes they know why and sometimes they don't, and those parents have a right to know what happened. They have a right to know what the school's policies are. They have a right to know what they can do next to keep their kids safe so that all of us can be sure that schools remain safe places no matter what. I am endlessly grateful to the legislators who are pushing back, and especially to Representative Finger McDonald for bringing this particular bill to say that in Oregon, our children will be able to learn in peace in every corner of this state.
Good morning. I am Sarah Finger McDonald. I represent House District 16, which is Corvallis and Adair Village. We are waking up every morning to news about innocent Americans being killed and intimidated. We're seeing our schools under attack. We're seeing our schools be put into lockdown. They seem to be determined to escalate every conflict, and every line is being crossed. Schools should be trusted places where we celebrate milestones like science fairs and concerts and game-winning goals. They should never be places where our students and families fear to go. Schools are being closed, forced into lockdown, and attendance is dropping. Every day, students and families are making calculations about whether it is safe for them to come to school. The Safeguarding Students and Families Bill provides information from a trusted source to help our families. It requires Oregon's public schools, K-12 and higher ed, to notify families, students, and staff when the presence of immigration is verified on school grounds. It's a simple bill. When our schools, colleges, and universities verify that ICE or other immigration agents are on their grounds, they let the school community know. We have a moral and legal obligation to teach every child who comes to school. It is unacceptable that this obligation could be used to target families. Schools are a second home. We must ensure that they are safe. We will stand beside our school communities and make sure they have the information they need to feel safe doing what so many of us took for granted this morning. Pack up backpacks, pack up lunch boxes, and rush out the door to a school where they are secure and welcome. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark. I'm with Avalo out of Oregon. I got involved to get rid of Avalo Airlines because Avalo was shackling, handcuffing, and deporting members of our community. These people were being treated like cargo and not people. These people aren't abstractions or headlines. These people are our neighbors, coworkers, and family members. What made this even more disturbing was learning that Avalo Airlines was being paid with public dollars while participating in these deportation flights. Oregon taxpayers should never be funding trauma, family separation, due process violations. Avalo cannot profit from public funds by deporting the public. This is about values and accountability. If a company profits from Oregon's public money, it should be respecting Oregon law and Oregon communities. That's why this bill matters. It draws a clear line and says our state dollars will not be used to harm the people who call Oregon home. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Lamar Wise. I'm the state representative for House District 48. It's good to see you all. Oregonians have been clear about what we stand for. We are a sanctuary state that believes in due process, civil rights, and protecting immigrant communities. How we spend our public dollars should reflect those values. This bill is simple. Oregon public money should not subsidize federal deportation efforts. If a company wants a state contract or grants or public subsidies, it must comply with Oregon law, including our longstanding sanctuary law. Let me be clear about what this bill does not do. It does not regulate the federal government, it does not interfere with immigration enforcement, and it does not tell private companies who they can work with. What it does do is set a clear standard for how Oregon spends Oregon money. We are the customers, and we can choose to spend dollars according to our values. Right now, we don't have those guardrails. That leaves communities fighting the same battle over and over again every time a company like Avalo tries to enter or re-enter our state. This bill gives agencies clarity, creates consistency, and ensures accountability. We're acting now so that we don't re-litigate this in 2027. Public dollars for public trust, that is what this legislation will deliver. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Carl Findling. I'm a hunter, conservationist, a Central Oregonian, and I'm here because decisions about public lands directly affect my family and my community. Too often those decisions are made on the other side of the country by people who have never set foot on our public lands or experienced what they mean to people who rely on them. That disconnect shows up quickly in the outcomes. For hunters and rural communities, access to public lands is not political. It is part of how families spend time together and pass down responsibilities and stewardship. The Public Lands Promise Bill matters because it restores balance. It says Oregon will not help carry out federal actions that undermine the lands our communities depend on. This federal response agenda is about standing together as Oregonians and insisting that federal power be exercised with respect for state authority, local voices, and Oregonians' rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. My name is Anthony Brodman. I'm the state senator for Central Oregon. Carl's perspective reflects what so many Oregonians experience every single day. Trump and congressional Republicans are hell-bent on attacking every facet of our life. In Oregon, this means our civil liberties, immigrant communities, as well as our public lands. We are not going to sit back while this administration makes our lives more expensive, less safe, and attempts to sell off our public natural resources to the highest bidder. Our Public Lands Promise Bill makes Oregon's position crystal clear. Our local and state governments will not collaborate with federal efforts to sell off public lands. For many Oregonians, especially those of us in Central and Eastern Oregon, this is not abstract. Public lands are a part of our family traditions, part of our heritage, part of our daily life, and the decisions made far away have real consequences for us on the ground. That is why we are taking action now to stand up for Oregon communities, Oregon values, and Oregon's future. Thank you.
Buenos dias. Good morning. My name is Jessica Maravilla, and I'm the Policy Director of the American Civil Liberties Union. Over the past year, we've heard the same concerns from people across Oregon. Parents, students, faith leaders, workers, and even public employees themselves. And people are asking, who is actually showing up in our communities? Who do they work for? And who's holding them accountable? Those questions are coming out of nowhere. They come from seeing federal agents operating without clear identification, from hearing about joint task forces that no one can explain, from state and local workers being asked, sometimes quietly, to assist in actions that don't feel right and may not even be legal under Oregon law. When people don't know who's acting or under what authority, trust breaks down. Families hesitate to take their kids to school. People avoid hospitals, houses of worship, public spaces, and businesses. And public employees are put in impossible positions, caught between the federal pressure and their duty to the people of Oregon. This isn't about politics for us. It is about something very basic: clear rules, clear responsibilities, and public trust. At the ACLU of Oregon, we believe Oregon can and should model what constitutional governance looks like, even in challenging times. And that means making sure that our power is exercised openly, lawfully, and with accountability. And this is why we are proud to support this federal response package. This is why we have been working alongside community partners and Representative Farah Chaichi to address these specific gaps and bring clarity where there's been confusion. And the result of that is LEVA. And with that, I'm honored to turn it over to Representative Chaichi.
Thanks, Jessica and ACLU, and good morning, folks. I'm Farah Chaichi. I'm the representative for House District 35, which is Beaverton and Aloha. Over the past year, I've heard from constituents who no longer feel sure about what is happening in their own neighborhoods. People have described seeing officers they can't identify, parents worrying about encounters near schools, community members unsure whether the people exercising authority around them are local, federal, or even operating under Oregon law. That uncertainty is not accidental, and it comes at a real cost. When people don't know who is acting or what rules apply, trust erodes and fear fills the gaps. While federal enforcement authority exists, Oregon has the responsibility to ensure that any law enforcement activity within our state is visible and accountable. That responsibility is why I'm proud to introduce the Law Enforcement Accountability and Visibility Act, LEVA. First, LEVA sets clear statewide standards for officer identification and limits the use of facial coverings to narrow legitimate circumstances like medical protection or undercover work. These rules aren't about restriction, they're about clarity and trust. Second, LEVA draws firm boundaries between Oregon and unconstitutional federal actions. It gives state and local employees, including those working in schools and universities, the clear authority to say no when they're asked to participate in discriminatory or unlawful enforcement. Third, LEVA brings transparency to joint task forces and cross-deputization agreements, so these arrangements can't quietly undermine Oregon law or our sanctuary protections. And finally, LEVA ensures accountability. So when the rules are broken, there are real tools to stop harm and prevent it from continuing. This bill is about restoring confidence, protecting our communities, and reaffirming that in Oregon, the rule of law is visible, accountable, and worthy of public trust. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. That concludes our prepared remarks, and we left some time for our Q&A. We will try to go for about 15 minutes or so. So I'm happy to help direct unless you have a question for a specific person, which it would be helpful if you directed it toward that person. Any questions? Lauren.
I have a question for Representative Johnson. Thank you. You are the one that is going to have the bill to withhold federal dollars, is that right?
That's correct.
Do you have examples of like where you see that being possible? And I'm just wondering if there's precedent, if other states have done that, and how you do that in a way that doesn't just result in further financial or retaliation from the federal government and just litigation and dumping more money into the legal system.
Absolutely. The goal is the exact opposite of what you just described. So what we're seeing right now is that the federal government has withheld or attempted to withhold $4.6 billion from Oregon, and that our Oregon Attorney General's office has brought successful lawsuits in court that have resulted in court orders that have forced the federal government to release that money. The question is, if the federal government gets a court order that they have illegally withheld funds and they don't follow the law, then what happens next? And we heard yesterday from the Oregon Attorney General that there are limited tools. There's more litigation, but we don't necessarily know that more litigation is going to work with a president who is showing time and time again that he doesn't respect the rule of law. So the idea of the Recourse Act is to create a tool that I sincerely hope we will never need to use. The guardrails on the bill are this. If the federal government unlawfully withholds funds from Oregon, and we sue, and we win, and a federal judge orders the federal government to release money, and the federal government chooses not to comply with a court order, then Oregon has the ability, should they choose to withhold funds up to and including that same amount. This is an enforcement mechanism that's used between the state or the federal government and taxpayers all the time. It's used between businesses all the time. And it's based on the idea that we can offset debts. That if the federal government is owing us money, we shouldn't be forced to continue to send paycheck after paycheck their way while they are not following the rule of law. My hope is to create a tool that we don't need to use, but if we ever need to use it, I want to make sure that Oregon is prepared.
To piggyback off of your answer there, is this happening in any other states? Do you know of any other precedent for this law?
Absolutely. So at least 8 states have proposed something similar or are in the process of preparing something similar. Some states are calling it the Recourse Act. Other states have chosen their own name. No state yet has passed this into law, but we added additional guardrails. So other states, for example, are targeting taxpayers, federal tax money. They're not requiring the same guardrails about court order, and I have the same concern that the reporter has. We don't want to escalate a situation. What we do want to have is make sure that we are prepared for the type of situation that I think if we went back in time 2 years ago, we wouldn't be concerned about the dynamics of the bill because we would think what an absurd scenario that we would ever find ourselves in. So it is my sincere belief that as Oregon is able to pass this, we will see other Democratic legislators following suit. I hope we don't ever need to use this tool, but if we were to use it, I would expect we'd be using it in conjunction with other states.
Do you have any examples of when we haven't been paid after a lawsuit?
Sorry about this. We have a member who needs to get to committee, so if anybody has any questions for Rep. Chaichi, let's do that now. Yeah.
Hi, Representative Chaichi, Mia with the Oregon Capitol Chronicle. I'm thinking about the California law that also tried to limit masking among ICE agents. I'm curious, are you at all concerned for lawsuits heading your way, or what did you take from the California law that maybe you are thinking of doing differently here in Oregon?
Thanks for that. Well, if you've watched Judiciary Committee in the House at all, you know my office is not a carceral office. We're not creating a crime like California did. We're using a private right of action for enforcement. And because we apply it to all levels of law enforcement, not just directed at the feds, we expect that it has a stronger chance to survive supremacy clause issues.
A follow-up, Representative. Last week in Portland, when we saw the interaction between Border Patrol and the shooting with the 2 suspects, there's no video of that case that has been able to find. Does your law include anything about body cameras?
It does not.
Is there a reason for that?
Probably the fiscal, honestly.
All right, thanks.
Apologies. We can go back to your follow-up question if you remember what it is for Rep. Tristan.
Has there been any examples of when we haven't gotten a patient from the federal?
So we've seen things that flirt with the line. And I think what we're trying to do here is be precise. And my bill creates the option. It doesn't force the state to do this. We've seen times where the payment isn't made right away. But we want to assume good faith, right? We want to assume that government entities are following the law. And sometimes the right hand isn't talking to the left hand in government, and we just need to sort that out. We haven't seen a consistent unwillingness to follow a court order when it comes to federal funds flowing into Oregon. I would point to examples like the Abrego Garcia case, where we have seen the federal government certainly flirt with, if not cross the line, about disobeying a court order willfully. So we haven't seen it in terms of funds, but I think that we've seen that the federal government is testing the boundaries in ways we haven't seen previously about the rule of law and about the power of our federal judiciary to enforce itself.
I'd love to talk more about just the reality of the situation. I mean, this is federal funding. We don't know exactly where the money would be withheld from. And I mean, just again, the reality of this, would the state even be able to, survive without those federal funds coming in? I know we had the budget deficit and everything going on with SNAP. That was a big issue where the governor was saying, we can't back pay all that and whatnot. So can you kind of just talk about if that were to happen, would the state potentially even have to fold to the president's request just financially?
Thank you for the question. I think what we're seeing is that any delay in payment is harming Oregonians already, right? That there are examples of small businesses or nonprofits where that money would have flowed to them, and even if we were successful in court and we got the money and circumstances like the Recourse Act wouldn't apply, we're still seeing community harm. We're still seeing people with anxiety that paychecks, that the SNAP benefits aren't coming in, or organizations that are unsure if they're going to get the same revenue next month or the same grant funding next month that they've been relying on this whole time. So I think we're seeing that harm already. My hope is that it diminishes, right? I really hope that this is a tool we are creating that we never have to use. And at the same time, one of my guiding principles is every time I have felt like things can't get any worse with this federal administration, I have been wrong. And so I want to make sure that we're preparing for what might happen in the future and not simply responding to what has happened in less than a year of the second Trump administration.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about the bill about public lands, Senator Broadman's bill. Have you heard about specific examples? I know it's the example in southeastern Oregon, but more examples of the state or the federal government trying to buy off some of this land? And can you just kind of explain that for our viewers, like what this is specifically targeting?
Yeah, we've heard time and again out of Washington, D.C., congressional Republicans looking at public lands as though they are a piggy bank for private industry and commercial development. I think we've been very upfront in Oregon that our public lands are not for sale. They never will be for sale. And in terms of specific projects in Oregon, I think the federal government has seen that we're going to stand up. So we don't have a specific example yet, but every time Congress talks about it seems that they talk about the West, they're referring to our public lands as something that they want to exploit. And that's inconsistent with our state's values, our tribal partners' values, and our way of life here in Oregon.
You mentioned tribal partners. I had a question for you, Senator Broadman. Does the public land promise bill affect tribal sovereignty?
No, and I want to be really clear about that. The legislative concept makes clear we're respecting tribal sovereignty to the extent that tribal governments are working with their federal partners to be stewards of land in Oregon, as they have since time immemorial. That this bill could not and does not interrupt that. Thank you.
I don't know who this is for. Any of you, I guess. Are you expecting any bipartisan support for any of these? What have the conversations been like with the minority party?
I hope so. I'm not aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, if any of our bills currently have a Republican on the bill. I think the values that underscore our bills, right, talking about the Recourse Act, the idea that we want to make sure funds flow into Oregon, right? Federal funds aren't flowing just into blue cities or rural counties. They're flowing into everywhere, and when they don't come in, they're affecting everybody. The issue of making sure that law enforcement is clearly identifiable, that's something that our local law enforcement has been doing an amazing job at. And when the federal government runs around hiding their identity, right, they are destroying that trust that local law enforcement has been working for decades to try to build up with Oregonians. So I think the values underscoring it are values that I know our Republican partners hold, and we will welcome as much bipartisanship as we can possibly have on this bill.
In response to that question, I'm Tom Anderson. I represent House District 19, and I have a bill to amend the Oregon Constitution to prohibit masks, to make sure everyone is identified, and to make sure we stop people from taking people off the streets without a warrant or actually viewing them committing a crime. And at one point, this was a bipartisan bill. It was introduced by Representative Javity on the North Coast and I for the same reasons, and I think for partly related to the reasons he had joined this bill, he has now left the Republican Party and has joined us in the Democrats and will be resisting us. Thanks.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Can I say something about that? So my bill that informs school communities when there's verification of immigration activity on school grounds, I see as an attendance bill. And as a state, we've been very concerned about school attendance. And if we, by giving parents and families and staff good information, can enable students to come to school, that is absolutely something that we should value and encourage, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on.
Let's go over here, because apologies, we've got quite a few questions.
Thank you. For Rep. Johnson, I just wanted to know, and apologies if I misunderstood, but there's a Recourse Act, and then you also mentioned another bill, something anti-discriminatory protections for immigrants. Is that a part of that same act, or is that separate? Can you kind of explain that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. That's a separate bill. Those are my two bills for this session. So the second bill is about making sure that immigrants in Oregon, right, wherever they are, wherever they're living, that they have access to all the same state systems we have. It doesn't touch any federal policies, but it means that if immigrants are working and they go to update their workplace authorization documents, we want to make sure that they're not afraid to do so and fearful that they're going to get retaliated against. It means that if Oregons get hurt on the, immigrants get hurt on the job, or their wages are stolen from them and they bring their case to court, the fact that they were born here or weren't born there is not going to be relevant toward their court case. And it updates Oregon's anti-profiling laws to include immigration status or perceived immigration status to the list of what Oregon law enforcement is not allowed to use for profiling purposes.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I expect that there will be more follow-up questions, so my inbox is open, as well as Elizabeth's over in the Senate Majority Office. We'll be sending out a press release following this to share a little bit more information as well. So thank you for joining us.
All right, there we go. Hearing the Democrats unveil their legislative agenda. We have reached out to the Republican side as well, but we have not heard back yet on their plans for the upcoming legislative session, but we have a lot more for you here. So this is Good Day Oregon Plus. We're live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. We're here every weekday, starting at 11 a.m., going up to our noon news. And sometimes it's things like that. We can bring you a full press conference of what's happening there. And sometimes it's catching up on other stories that are going on. That's what we're going to do next. So we're going to take a quick break. If you are watching on YouTube or Facebook or one of our other platforms, you'll see this video end. Good time to download the Fox 12 Oregon app for whatever platform you're on, whether that's on your mobile device or whether you're on Fire TV, Roku, Apple TV. That's a great way to watch us live and other newscasts, and also watch all of the other extra content that we have on there, or rewatch some of your favorite segments. So good time to get that